By the late autumn of 1914, the Lublin Governorate experienced a 33% demographic collapse. The first months of the Great War removed a third of the region's population through displacement, disease, and combat. Detailed ledgers from the period record the physical cost. Across the region, military operations and requisitions destroyed 1,884,000 buildings, assets, and units of livestock. The village of Ostrów provides a snapshot of this data. From a baseline of 822 residential homes and agricultural structures, 512 were leveled. This regional annihilation followed a specific military sequence, a celebrated tactical victory that generated a catastrophic logistical aftermath. On August 22, 1914, General Viktor Dankl launched the Austro-Hungarian First Army north across the Danube River. His objective was to strike the Imperial Russian forces before they could fully mobilize their numbers. Dankl's forces met the Russian Fourth Army at Kraśnik. Over 3 days of fighting, the Austro-Hungarians drove the Russian center back toward Lublin, capturing 6,000 prisoners and establishing a clear tactical success. This momentum produced a geographic contradiction. The First Army drove north, while the rest of the front remained static, leaving Dankl isolated in an 80-kilometer salient. As they pushed deeper without railways, reliance on dirt roads stretched supply lines to the point of failure. The Austro-Hungarian High Command focused on the immediate tactical gain, elevating Dankl to the rank of Count. However, this celebration blinded them to the operational reality. Their victory had created a structural vulnerability that would soon lead to a total collapse. In early September, the neighboring Austro-Hungarian Fourth Army received orders to pivot south toward Lemberg to respond to a crisis on a different sector of the front. This maneuver tore open an 80-kilometer operational void on Dankl's eastern flank, leaving the rear of the First Army entirely exposed to Russian countermaneuvers. To plug this massive gap, the High Command deployed General Remus von Woyrsch's Silesian Landwehrkorps. These were older reservists from districts like Opole and Kluczbork. They marched in outdated blue uniforms and lacked the basic infrastructure of a frontline unit, possessing no field kitchens, medical support, or engineering tools. Most critically, the entire corps possessed only 8 machine guns. They were ordered to screen an 80-kilometer front with a fraction of the firepower required for a modern defense. By committing under-equipped second-line troops to cover such an expansive void, the command ensured that any contact with advancing Russian columns would result in a massive loss of life. The defense focused on the Koserjevterrader and the slopes of Biała Góra. Here, the screening forces dug in, constructing 3 rungs of trenches and barbed wire entanglements to meet the Russian advance. The Russian army launched a series of high-intensity frontal assaults against the Wondzin Farm and the Bychawka-Ossowa line, utilizing their superior infantry numbers to overwhelm the Austro-Hungarian outposts. These assaults were supported by a vast concentration of artillery. In a single day, Russian batteries fired 1,155 shells, creating a continuous barrage against the defensive positions. The survival rate for defenders fell to just 33%. The physical fortifications were systematically dismantled by the force of the heavy shells. To maintain a presence on the line, the German command was forced into emergency consolidations, merging 3 shattered battalions into single weak units to replace the losses. The fighting at Bychawka proved that infantry units could no longer maintain their positions under concentrated artillery without a continuous industrial-scale supply of munitions and reinforcements. Between September 7th and 9th at Tarnawka, the Austro-Hungarian right flank gave way. A Russian heavy artillery counteroffensive exploited the overextended line, turning the retreat into a general collapse. Torrential autumn rain added to the crisis, quickly degrading the region's dirt roads into deep, impassable trenches of clay. This created a logistical trap. The 3 heavy artillery brigade became hopelessly immobilized in the mud, forcing the crews to spike their own guns and abandon them to avoid capture. The retreat resulted in 25,000 casualties. Thousands of these soldiers were buried in anonymous mass graves, their remains interred in unmarked trenches dug directly into the Lublin fields. This anonymous loss of life stood in contrast to the specific burials afforded to the elite. While thousands disappeared into mass pits, Individuals like Major Count Konstantin von Węgierski were interred with markers at cemeteries like Boża-Wola. The campaign's ultimate legacy is a pure accounting of the dead. It demonstrated that a pre-war doctrine based on a cult of the offensive could not survive the industrial and geographical realities of the Eastern Front.